إله إلا هو لا إله إلا الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. We left at the last talk with a short, perhaps even a curse introduction to the system of inner knowledge associated with Ahl Shia, or what is known as Arfan or Gnosis. I tried to explain during the last talk that Arfan must be distinguished from Tasawwuf, because the system of knowledge of Arfan is different in some ways and gives different weightings to the sources of knowledge than Tasawwuf. Tasawwuf is main source of confirmation and certainty is associated with kashf or unveiling. The kashf that comes to a man or a woman of inner orientation as a result of mushahada and as a result of inner mujahada may lead to enlightenment and illumination without the need to know the structure of knowledge and the proofs associated within that system of knowing. In Shia Arfan or Gnosis, mushahada in and of itself is insufficient proof. Mushahada can exist without knowledge, without rational knowledge. One can be a person in illumination and insight within Tasawwuf by being, for example, illiterate, by not exercising his intellectual or aqli faculties. This kashf can come to him as a result of the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a result of inner struggle and mujahada, without necessarily having to be involved in any systematic research into the origins and sources of knowledge. We have come across in the past many great masters on the path who were illiterate, who were teachers to some of the great names that we know. And I have frequently alluded that some of the greatest insights that were brought to inner knowledge came from people who had no formal training whatsoever. So with this proviso, I nevertheless would like to confirm and can confirm that the inner awareness that comes from using the rational faculties, and by rational I don't mean simply logical deduction. Logical deduction within Gnosis is insufficient to reach enlightenment. That's why the reason of modern man can never be the basis for the sublime qualities of a rational mind. The rational mind in Islam, and in particular in Shia Islam, is higher than what we consider to be daily reasoning or speculative reasoning. It is reasoning that has on it a very profound intuitive feature to it. But nevertheless, it is based upon aql, it is based upon the intellect. The greatest master of Shia Arfan, and of Arfan generally I would say, is a man by the name of Mulla Sadr al-Shirazi. Mulla Sadr al-Shirazi was born around the middle of the 16th century in Iran, and of course Shiraz, as his name would indicate, to a family that was quite a powerful and well-known family, and provided the main props to the early Safavid period, the Awam family. They subsequently also provided other great notables in the history of Iran. But Mulla Sadra was born into quite a powerful family in Shiraz, and at a very early age he exhibited the usual prodigious interest in the Naqvi sciences, the sciences of transmission that come from knowing the Quran, the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and the riwayas and sayings of the Imams, as well as he exhibited a profound interest in systematic philosophy, and particularly the philosophy of the Masha'iyun, who are the main body of Muslim philosophers, culminating in the great Ibn Sina. His father then sent him to the school of Isfahan, which was just then being organized by a man by the name of Mir Damad. And Mir Damad played a very important role in transmitting to Mullah Sadruddin Shirazi the essence of the system of thought associated with Islamic philosophy, which, as I may have indicated in the past, is primarily a synthesis of Greco-Hellenistic philosophy, in particular Aristotelian philosophy, and elements of that are peculiarly Islamic, that come from an attempt to marry revelation or iha with Greco-Hellenistic philosophy. His other two great teachers is a man by the name of Shaykh Bahauddin Amili. As his name would indicate, he came from Jabal Amil in Lebanon, and he's one of the first group of alims that were brought from southern Lebanon into Iran as part of the program of the Safavid rulers to convert Iran to Shi'ism. When the Safavids took power in Iran, this was sometime in the early part of the 16th century, the majority of the Iranian population was non-Shia. It was actually Shafi'i. And Shi'ism was established in Iran over a long period of time, particularly around areas where there were large Arab settlements, such as Qom. But the overall landscape, the overall madhabi landscape of Iran was Shafi'i. So Shah Ismail brought a number of people from southern Lebanon, which was the heartland of orthodox Tashayyu, as it were, into Iran, and they played a very large part in establishing the formal system by which Sunnism was gradually displaced by Shi'ism as the madhab of the vast majority of the Iranian population. And the two people associated with this was a man by the name of Sheikh Abdurrahman al-Karaki and Sheikh Bahauddin Amili's father. So Amili means a man who comes from Jabal Amil, which is that whole area of southern Lebanon, which has been historically a stronghold of the Ahl Shia. Sheikh Bahauddin Amili taught Mullah Sadra the Naqli sciences, the sciences associated with the traditions and the hadith, particularly of the Imams. And Shaykh Bahauddin himself was in many ways a Sufi adept. If one reads his work, which is called Al-Kashkul, which is in English the album, you would find many indications of his inner orientations, and he probably was associated with one of the many spiritual tariqas that were then very strong in Iran. So from Shaykh Bahauddin Amili, he got from him the whole corpus of Islamic hadith associated with the Prophet ﷺ and with the Imams, with a Sufic twist to it. His third great teacher is a man by the name of Mir Findersky, who was a Sufi and was probably the most prominent of the followers of the great master Ibn Arabi in Iran at that time. I think I have said in the past that the school of Ibn Arabi became very firmly established in Iran through a whole chain of people, culminating in this Mir Findersky. So from these three sources, he established himself as one of the greatest and most promising of the young philosophers and hukama, or theosophists, associated with the school of Isfahan under the master Mir Damad. As is usual, as is wont, he got into conflict with the ulamas, and in particular with his attempt to create the first burgeoning synthesis between the various streams that influenced his thinking. And he was confronted several times by attempts to make him into an apostate, by attempts to try to corner him and to make him desist from his exclamations and his dialogues and discourses in the school. Finally, the pressure got so much that he basically withdrew. He spent, some people say 7, others say 14 years, in a village in Qom, near Qom, which is south of Tehran. It's about 20 or 30 miles south of Tehran, where he spent, according to his biographers, in a period of intense pietistic exercises, mujahadas, mortifications, and he cut himself off basically. And his main purpose, as he tells us, is in his journey to the discovery of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He began to see the way in which his reason and his intellectual faculties could be propelled to another level of intuitive insight. And he emerged from that retreat, that 7 or 14-year retreat, having composed probably the greatest work in Islamic hikmah or philosophy. Its short title is Al-Asfar Al-Arba'a, or the 4 journeys. Its long title is the 4 journeys of the soul. الرحلة المتعالية في الأسفار الأربعة, the heavenly ascent or the heavenly journey, the 4 heavenly journeys of the soul. And these 4 journeys are the progress of the soul and the movement of the soul and the self towards the Absolute. Having emerged and having tamed his more provocative sayings, he was then offered a teaching post in Shiraz, where he spent the rest of his days teaching and propagating his hikmah or his wisdom, which in the final analysis is the famous combination that I discussed earlier, the combination of the linkage between tasawwuf, in particular the system of the great master Ibn Arabi, the illuminationism that comes from the philosophy of Shahabuddin Sahrawardi, and the Mashai philosophy of Ibn Sina, within a framework of altogether Ithna Ashari orientation. But if one reads the Asfar, which is his main masterwork, his greatest masterwork, it comes in about 12 volumes. I haven't read it all. I've read parts of it, maybe 3/4 of it. It is not a work of, you cannot approach that work the way that you would approach the work of Ibn Arabi, for example. It is a work that is steeped in philosophy. It's a system of philosophy. It's a confirmation of the potential of the human mind in reaching cognition and knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by leap, not in the imagination, as the Sufi would have it, but a leap of the mind. And the Asfar al-Arba'a is that. It is quite a dense, quite a difficult and complex book, and it is very difficult to read it and understand it without commentaries, without reading commentaries on it. And there have been many commentaries written on it subsequently by his greatest follower, a person by the name of Sa'id al-Qummi, Qadi Sa'id al-Qummi, and up to the modern times, the great interpretations brought to Mulla Sadra by Sayyid Hadi Sabzuwari. But I'll try to go into some of the essential features of Shia Irfan, because by and large, if you know Mulla Sadra, or if you know the system of the great master Mulla Sadra, you know the essence of Shia Irfan. There has been very little added to it, and there has been very little nuances here, twists there, developments elsewhere, but ultimately the core of it, the systematization of the way in which the awakened mind, working through the intellect, can reach cognition. The heart of Shia Irfan has not changed over the centuries. Mulla Sadra's main contribution to inner knowledge is the affirmation that the source of reality, or that reality of realities, is not the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but rather existence. This is a very central feature to the system of the great master, and a lot of things flow from there. Inshallah we'll come to that. So existence, absolute existence is reality. Essence is only a degradation of reality. It is only the making existence less pure by giving it the features of essence. That's one aspect. The other aspect of Shia Irfan is what is known as a system of tashkik, or it is a form of systematic ambiguity. That is, the ambiguity is probably the wrong word to use for tashkik, but existence is in a state of constant change and flux and moves towards higher and higher realms. There is no such thing as any existence that can maintain a certain constancy to it. There is a gradation of existence. The gradation of existence is not the usual ones that we associate with the schools, for example, of the Ishraqis, the illuminationists. It is not a mechanical gradation. It is not a structured gradation. It is a flow. And the form of existence is graded. The gradient, as it were, is a flow rather than a step function. Those of you who are inclined towards mathematics, it's more of a linear rather than, or a geometric progression rather than a step function, which puts people at certain levels or groups of existence or contingents at certain level and another one at a different level. There's an infinite series of graded forms of existence as we go up and move up the scale towards the absolute. This is known as a system of tashkik or ambiguity, in the sense that when we say that something exists, it exists only at that split moment in time as it moves into another state and at another level of existence. The third element of Shia Irfan is what is known as the haraka jawhariya. That is the essence of things. This is perhaps the wrong word to use, but the core of things, the core of materia, the core of phenomena, change to a higher level as we move. So movement and change, flux and change, are the necessary concomitants of the system of knowledge. These three factors, the predominance of al-wujud or existence over that. Now there's a long philosophical debate as to which predominates over the other. In Islamic philosophy generally, it is the essence that predominates. And Mulla Sadra, through a series of complex logical reasoning, inverts the system whereby existence predominates. I do not want to go, it's quite a technical elaboration as to why existence is the real rather than the essence. Ultimately the proof is there in my mind, that the reality of realities is not the that of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it is rather being, sheer being, absolute wujud. From there's a linkage you will find between the statement or the exclamation of Ibn Arabi, لا موجود إلا الله, there is no existent but Allah, and the establishment through the ratiocination of Mulla Sadra that existence has priority over essence. As existence manifests itself, the manifestation of existence creates the essential forms of the gradations of existence. So if you look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you try to construct Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without tashbih, as absolute being that we cannot and will not know and understand, but can only approach, the manifestations, the tajalli of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the forms gives the essence to these forms. So essence of any group of existent entities by its very nature is a defining characteristic. And as you define it, you limit it. Therefore essence cannot be the absolute. The limitations associated with the essence of a group of beings or a genus of beings, that gives it the defining. For example, mankind. The essence of mankind is mankindness or manness or humanity. That is the common feature associated with that genus, which is men and women. But it is a mental construct. The human essence of men and women is primarily a construct of the mind. It is not something that exists in external reality. It manifests itself in forms that appear to be real in a sense, but they are subsumed within existence. This, of course, goes against the whole drive of Islamic philosophy prior to that, which gives the priority to essence and says that it is the essentialness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is unapproachable rather than the absolute being in existence. So, in Mulla Sadra's perception, nothing is real. There is no reality except absolute existence. Everything else is contingent to it. Everything else derives its essential nature from the effulgence of the existent. So primordial reality, central reality, al-haq, is al-mawjood, which is existence. Allah is absolute existence. Allah is absolute pure being. And the way in which He combines the knowledge of existence, the manifestations of existence, draws a great deal from Ibn Arabi. The next step of the gradations of existence, as it were, relates to what we call the divine names or the attributes, the sifat. He calls them the ideals or the Platonic ideals. But whichever way you call them, whether you call them Platonic ideals, divine names and attributes, or the essentials such as al-ayan al-thabta, the point to be made here is that existence is reality, essence is only a construct of reality, it's a contingent of reality, and that the essence of something is brought under the canopy of its existence. Alaykum as-salam. Again, the way in which the manifestation of existence takes place, it takes place by imparting to forms, whether they are in the realm of alam al-malakut or alam al-jabarut or the alam al-malaika, whichever realm we're talking about. Each realm has its own essential features. So the essence of the world, of the manifested world physically, is matter. That matter is the essence of it, and the essence of matter is the way in which existence manifests its being. As we go down the grades and the levels and scales, we find that things have more and more of essential features and less of existential features. And in contrast to, for example, Sahrawardi, whom we talked about last time, which is the system whereby beings and existent entities partake in the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the degree in which they partake defines their degree of existence. Here it is, the more complex things are, the more put together they are, the more difficult they are, the less they partake in existence. So the nature of an entity and its proximity to the source of all being, which is absolute existence, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is how complex and how difficult that entity is. The more complex the construct, the more distant it is in participating in the existential reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the journey, as it were, of any entified thing towards absolute existence moves by removing these layers of complexities until we reach the most absolute and simple, which is absolute existence. So al-haraka jawhariyya, which I mentioned last time, which is the movement of essential features towards less and less cumbersome, less and less complexified forms, is also a way by which, if you want to call it the celestial journey or the spiritual journey, in modern times you might call it a spiritual form of evolution. This movement brings things to a higher and higher level of being, and therefore to a higher and higher level of participating in absolute existence. The desire for every entified thing is for continued existence. He says that very, very blankly and boldly, I think. The desire of things, whatever they are, whoever they are, whether they are things that have cognitive faculties to them, immaterial things, things in the realm of the spirit, their desire is to stay. Their desire is to exist. And the way that they manifest that desire is by stripping all the complexities that distance themselves from the source of existence. And these complexities, paradoxically, is their essence. So the drive or the journey of the soul towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, towards absolute existence, implies by its very nature, in some ways, the stripping away of the humanness of man. The things that we are all attached to, the things that give us our essential characteristics. But these essential characteristics are also those characteristics that distance us from absolute existence. So this constant desire for entified things to exist and subsist in the name al-Baqi, the ever-present, the everlasting, is one way in which existence manifests itself by stripping the essence or its essential features. So when we say this person has become ethereal, or this person is levitating, or whatever, it is to do with that. It is to do with overcoming what we think of our essential forms that define and that guide and limit each person, individual, group of beings or genuses. So existence is positive, is definite, is determinate. Essence is vague, dark, and complex. It is putting the whole system in many ways on its head. Essence is the way by which the real, the haqq, manifests itself by providing the essence of entified things. As individuals, as groups, as subgroups, as whole collections, and as universes as we go. Essence is not co-joined with existence, in the sense that in traditional tasawwuf, or in traditional sufi systems of inner enlightenment, although they have changed since that time, but if you go back, say, if you read Awalif al-Ma'arif, it is all to do with stripping away your existence, denying your existent nature in order to be brought down to the essence, and that whatever is left participates or partakes in the ultimate being. Mulla Sadra and generally Shia Arfan do not accept that, because it implies that there is a tashbih in us. The whole system of Shia Arfan rejects the immanence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It rejects that man has in him a certain spark that is irretrievably and absolutely divine. Man's journey is upward, and it is the upward journey that leads to it. It does not lead to it by a journey whereby the existence of a person is denied, and the hope or the desire is that what remains participates. It is more of a positive and more of a struggle that I know many Sufi paths have that. It's a question of terminology. The terminology of the path is that you strip your existence, you do your mujahada against itself, you deny that your existence is there, and by the process of denial that you are the source of existence, or that you have any independent existence, that your existence is completely contingent upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you will discover the divine in you. Shia Irfan denies completely that this is possible. It is to do with the absolute transcendence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The most that man can aspire to is to reach the frontier whereby perfection in the form of the insan al-kamil is reached. But that frontier is where there is a form of fusion with the divine names and attributes, but not with absolute existence. So, while Ibn Arabi, but Ibn Arabi also agrees with Mulla Sadra, and Mulla Sadra of course agrees with Ibn Arabi in the core, in the essentials of this approach. They both see that there must be a movement, and the movement is hierarchical, it's linear, it's graded. As we move up, the process of simplifying our being, the process of stripping away what we think of as defining characteristics or our essences, we then approach a point where we can be considered as being in a simplified form of being, and that simplification brings us towards subsistence, towards continuation, self-subsistence. This is the argument as it relates to essence and existence. The other argument, as I said, the other central feature of the philosophy or the theosophy, the hikmah of Mulla Sadra is tashkik, or systematic ambiguity. This is drawn from the Sahrawardi school of illumination, whereby, as I mentioned last time, or the time before that, we all participate in the degree. Our degree of enlightenment is a function of our degree of participation in the nur, on the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these gradations, these linear gradations, where everything is more or less, where everything cannot be stated as a fact as being is at that moment in time. It is at that fractional moment. It has a certain reality, but that reality changes. The movement of existence, whereby you cannot fix it at any point in time, that everything is in a state of flux. And the movement of flux, as I said before, can be linear upward. There's a desire, there's a propulsion for us to move towards more systematized and simplified forms, rather than towards more complexified and more essential forms. This movement is known as tashkik. It basically denies the possibility of fixing anything at any point in time, and affirms that reality and existence, by its very nature, is in a state of motion. This gives the definition or the ma'na of existence a certain ambiguity, a certain equivocation about it, because it is unfixed. Essences are fixed. Existence is not fixed. And as existences move at every fractional point in time, one can divide time ad infinitum. At every step and movement of time, existence changes its fundamental features and characters, while the defining forms, i.e. the essence, tends to remain constant. what he's saying is, again in simplified forms, is that man, for example, from one point to the other, your reality changes as a result of the changes in your existing patterns. Your essence of manness or womanness tends to remain constant. And this leads to the establishment of the principle of oneness and multiplicity, identity and difference. Again, it moves towards the tasawwuf, or the philosophy of the great master Ibn Arabi, where the diversity and multiplicity is a mirror image of the one. But it is not really a situation whereby diversity, as it approaches the one, dissolves. Shia Irfan does not deny the existence of individual beings. It affirms their existence. It does not, individual beings are not simply effaced, the monism, as it were, that all is Allah, wherever you turn is the face of Allah, and that our existence is primarily a reflection of the real, does not exist in Shia Irfan. Shia Irfan, every being participates in existence, and every being has an identity. Our identity is not a figment of our imagination. It is not something that is posited against the real. It is a way in which the real manifests itself. But we nevertheless maintain an identity. We nevertheless have a certain defining feature as we relate to the tashkik, the ambiguity by which existence moves towards one. This movement is the Harakat Jawhariyah. This movement is the movement of the heart of all beings, tends to move or desires to move towards the perfected form. And each form that exists, each being that exists, is not completely different from the one before it. It has under it all the features and qualities of the one before it. For example, he links man to a plant. Plant, by adding additional characters and features to it, turns into an animal. Animals, by adding additional features and qualities and essential characteristics to it, become man. So it is not that the desire of the plant is to become man. It is the nature of things, the nature of the spiritual evolutionary cycle pushes plants into higher forms. These higher forms ultimately move into man, and the movement of man towards the realm of ideas, towards the realm of alam al-mithal, the world of imagination, brings us into another category where we move higher and higher until we reach the insan al-kamil, or the perfect man. And the perfect man of the Shia, of Shia Irfan, not of the Shia Irfan, is no different from the perfect man of Ibn Arabi or of Al-Karim al-Jili. It is that person by whom the all existence is simplified. All created entities, all materia, all phenomena are brought to the point of simplified truth. That perfection exists because without that perfection there's a denial of the system of al-harakat jawhariyah. That is, that the essential attributes and qualities of things tend towards higher levels. So the tendency of man is towards exercise of his perfected qualities. And these perfected qualities ultimately join up with the perfected attributes, simplified attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this can only be found at one point, at one instant, at the naqta under the ba, which is the defining characteristics of the tajalli of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the names and attributes. Shia call this person the ultimate inheritor of the Nur al-Muhammadi, who is the Imam Sahib al-Zaman alayhi salam. The Ahl al-Tasawwuf call it something else, but ultimately, because of the drive towards simplicity, because of the drive towards unity, because of the drive towards unicity, there is no way in which manifestation in its created form can exist except in simplified purity. So there are many points of similarity, there are many points of, some, not many, but some points of difference between traditional tasawwuf and Shia Arfan. In its theosophy, in its system of knowledge, it borrows a great deal from Ibn Arabi. He says the driving force behind the advancing evolution, spiritual evolution, is the force of ishq or love. And it is this force, this primordial, or what the Sufis call Nas al-Rahman, the driving motor of all beings, is this desire, this ishq. In the case of Shia Arfan, is towards existence and continuity in existence, self-subsistence. In Tasawwuf it has a different name. Reality is the same. Because all existent things strive for permanence, that is, strive for permanent existence, absolute existence, therefore, is good, is absolutely good. Evil in Shia Arfan is merely relative. It is merely the inability or unwillingness of existent beings at any point of the matrix, at any point in time, at any conflux of various lines and forces, not to recognize that the drive forward is propelled by the mercy and rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the mercy and rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes from His name Al-Wadud. The ishq that we have, the love that we have for permanence, for continuity in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the desire for us to be within absolute, permanent and pure existence. At the point where man's perfections have been completely unified with the divine names and attributes, at that point the celestial realm merges with the divine. And this is the gateway to to paradise, to Jannah, to whatever you want to call it, the paradise of continuity of khulud. And the gatekeeper is the Imam, Sahib al-Zaman, the perfect man, or the perfect man, qutb of his age, if you're a Sufi. So the principle of tashkik or systematic ambiguity basically relates identity and sameness with multiplicity and difference. The movement in this system of ambiguity, which has now become a principle, that existence is ambiguous in its present form, and that the reduction of the ambiguity of existence is a question of how far we participate in this divine love that pushes us forward. Now, this is in many ways very, very similar, I might add, to 20th century existentialism. If anybody's read Kierkegaard or Bergson, you'll find that, you say this guy has borrowed entire chapters from Mulla Sadra. But the things that we use in modern day existentialism, there are terms that are completely alien in the system of Shia Arfan, for things like dread and anxiety and fear as being the governing paradigms of man, and the limiting existence to the human condition. This does not exist in Islam, and does not exist within the mind of a true mu'min, of a true believer. This anxiety, dread, all this is nonsense. Existence is not limited to human perceptions of existence. There is a reality that is beyond and above us. It is one that we can aspire to. It's one we can aspire to reach the gateways to. And the more we approach the gateways, the more we participate in that existence, in that existent, absolute existence. But it is not driven by fear, it is not driven by ennui, it is not driven by what the Germans call angst. None of this applies. Shia Arfan is a very optimistic system. It's a system that believes that perfection is desirable, it's possible, that we increase our awareness of being by moving along the path towards greater and greater spiritual realization, that what we think of as our essential humanity is really another veil between us and existence. I'd like to summarize by just saying two things more. And that's to translate directly from Mulla Arabi, the Mulla Sadra. He says, Arfan is to know what you're doing and liking it. Liking what you're doing without knowing it can be any way that leads to self-enlightenment. Knowing without liking what you're doing is unfortunately the way of not the Sufis, but the sophists, and the way of the pedants, and the way of those who want to constrict the human spirit. The way of Arfan is to know what you're doing and like what you're doing. When you do your ibadas, when you do your jihad, when you do your salat, when you do your sawm, when you do your hajj, when you do your dhikr, when you do anything to do with uplifting, it is not done for the sake of ritual. It is not done for the sake of a drive that you think is going to bring you to a high level of cognition and knowledge. It is also something that you must enjoy doing. La ilaha illallah. This is in great summary what the philosophy or hikmah of Mulla Sadra means. There's a whole lot of other things associated with it that I have not discussed but truncated, really in deference to what Luqman was said last week. That is, we don't want to get into the whole thing of cause and effect and al-illa wal-ma'lul and the ways of knowledge and eschatology and whether human souls, for example, Mulla Sadra has a whole section on why transmigration is not possible, because the harakat jawhariya, that is the essential movement of the quality